Hello everybody, thank you for joining us. Today we are going to do a quick sketch of Judge Dredd. This is personally one of my favorite pop culture figures, one of my favorite characters in pop culture, and we will do a shoulders and head shot. So I would think that we'll take this angle because otherwise his get up on this shoulder is going to overwhelm pretty much everything. So shoulder, head, right there. And looking that way, essentially. He has the collar thing here. So he has these. So I think that before we delve into anything else, we should definitely speak about Judge Dredd, the character. I think he's fairly well known in comic book pop culture circles because he is one of many unique characters that still somehow has this fresh look about him. The way this world, his world is portrayed, it's just astonishing how the creators came up with such an awesome concept. Essentially, he is a British comics character, and he was co-created by three comic book greats. And I think that when I mention the names, some of you, I'm pretty sure, would be familiar with these names. John Wagner being the first person that I'm mentioning here. John Wagner, the creator in comic books, in pop culture. He has a very illustrated history in pop culture, and that means that he has worked for Marvel Comics, for DC Comics. He has worked, of course, he was instrumental in creating the genius design of pretty much everything that is aligned to this character that we are sketching right now. So what we're just doing is it's a comic book Judge Dredd sketch. So Pat Mills is the other creator, again, who has prominently worked in the British publication in like prominent titles like Slain, Recom, of course Judge Dredd over the years. Genius creativity at work here. And of course Carlos Esquerra, who has as far as I know, he has passed away. So I think that there is an indent here in the helmet. Goes way back. This goes all the way back, I think, right till here. Joins there, and then bring certain bits here inward, and there it is. So that is more or less. Let me have a look here. We have to balance some things out here. We will get to in a second. So Judge Dredd is a futuristic police officer who is who belongs to a panel of law enforcement officers in a very sort of apocalyptic, and like there's like two contrasts. There's the mega city, but then there's also the apocalyptic wasteland, which they keep referring to as a remnant of the war. So Judge Dredd is one of the officers that is tasked with keeping order in this very dystopian and both grim but also somehow very, very luring future. So he has these like decorated, he's decorated with this like this eagle shoulder piece, and we will of course we'll do the drill and putting down all the pencil work there. So among his abilities is an enhanced vision. I guess it's engineered vision that helps him not only just work his weapons, but also helps him to look more clearly into any thing that is like going on in the dark. He is an excellent marksman, expert with weapons. Is a very effective hand-to-hand combatant. In fact, when DC Comics did a very, very welcome welcome crossover between Judge Dredd and Batman, and you could check those out as well. They're fairly good stories that showed their worlds like crossing over. He was one of the few people who has actually managed to knock out Batman just using his good old-fashioned training and reflexes. And they actually had two crossovers, like people loved the crossover, and that is why they did a second one. So he always has this grim, like grimacing mouth expression. That is like a signature Dredd. So raise the lines here and you can see this more clearly. Now, all the judges necessarily, here's the beauty of creativity at work here, and why this character is so important. If you look at his fellow judges, of course there are male judges, there are female judges. By the way, these judges, they are trained not just to apprehend criminals, but they are authorized, I guess due to the requirement of that very pressing time, they're authorized to pass sentence right there and then, and then either apprehend a criminal if he has to be incarcerated, or to execute him if the crime is fitting for that. So that is the pretty much the premise, but the interesting concept that Mr. Wagner geniusly intertwined with this was the presence of the supporting characters. So supporting characters as in these are not just necessarily the bad guys that we're talking about. We're talking about supporting characters as in specific officers on the force, and also supporting characters from the mega city. Like there are some there are characters that provide comedic relief, and they've tried to infuse that into the very first movie in which Sylvester Stallone played Judge Dredd. But in the second Hollywood take on Dredd, which is actually, well, I would honestly say that I like both in their own aspect, but I think that the new one that had Carl Urban playing the character. It was a much more grittier, very realistic version of this character, and the reality in which he exists. So very violent, and showed that the character has this unwavering and unflinching dedication to justice. And even when he is outnumbered, he is basically locked in a confined structure with the bad guys, he does not flinch. And in fact, when he goes on his spree to begin eliminating them, they understand why this guy is like feared in the circles of not just criminals but even among his own peers. He has this very hard-hitting, almost like machine-like sense of justice. So if there is the beauty, as I mentioned, of the character is that if there is a human side to Judge Dredd, they did tap into that in the movie. By the way, there's these cool bolt-like things in his visor here, so they add this little character. So they did tap into that aspect in the movie, but again, in the comics, although yes, he shows concern when he's on like different missions, but again, shown to be very, very staunch, non-compromising, and sometimes even to the point of being unreasonable when considering factors above justice. So we're just throwing in some inks here. This is essentially like metal, so let's just put in some wavy lines. Let's put in some quick inks here. And of course he has this he has what you call an array of weapons that are specifically to be used only by judges. If anybody else uses them, such as if a judge was to lose his weapon, just anybody could not just step up and use that weapon, because it's assigned to him, like to his digital signature. So although this comic was created in the 70s, there's so much going on in terms of modernization. It was called 2000 AD. It was I think it was a quarterly, or no, it was a bi-weekly too. It was a bi-weekly effort in which different stories were published, and Judge Dredd was one of the main ones. So it used to be published in parts, and there were like breakthrough technology shown on those panels with gritty artwork, very realistic stories. In spite of being completely sci-fi, they used to pull it off every time. Even like a world in which there's engineered dinosaurs, they made that look like genuinely threatening. So this shield that he has here is his pride and joy. I think it has his name on here. I think it is Dredd. So his name, of course, is Joseph Dredd, and he is, as he called himself, the Law. So that is a quick sketch of Judge Dredd. If you somehow have not tried this character out, I would really recommend you to please check him out, check his stories out. There are many collected editions. There might be material online, but I think holding that good old-fashioned book and then going through that wondrous artwork, there are many talents which jumped on board for Judge Dredd, and those were like along the lines of Brian Bolland, nice clean artwork, John Corbin. So please do try it out, and let's actually put some tint here. That looks a little empty. Yeah, now it's more complete. We put out content pretty much every day, so please do subscribe, keep in touch, and have yourself a wonderful day.